Sounds
Welcome.
great.
Welcome to Small Budget Big Results, our webinar for today. This is our part of our webinar series that we're doing as part of the Sunshine Plan for recovery from COVID and the hurricanes and basically everything 2020 has had to throw at us this year. So we are going to today have as our presenter Karin Mast. She is Vice President with Miles's Hospitality Division and works with small DMOs and resorts and hotels. So small budgets is kind of her thing. So she's going to have some good insight to share on how to make the most out of your budget and get some results. Just a reminder, we are recording this webinar. We're recording all of them. They're all, I'm trimming a bunch of them today, but they're all going to be up in our industry portal, so that anybody who wants to revisit these, or if you can't make any of them in the future, all of the recordings will be there for you to peruse at your leisure and in times that work for you. So we are recording. And so check out also as well the entire list of our webinars for upcoming. We have them scheduled throughout the entirety of 2020, leading right up till the holiday, and we will be posting some new topics in 2021 for the beginning of the year. That we are fleshing out right now. So be sure to check the full list and see if there's anything else that you find of interest that you might want to check in and see or revisit the recording of in the future. And that is all on the portal. Again, that URL is louisianatravel.com/industry. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Karin and let her get started.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that nice introduction, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. Very happy to have you in attendance, and for those of you that couldn't make it that are watching this recording, I hope you enjoy. So as Jennifer noted, my name is Karin Mast. I'm a Senior Vice President with Miles Partnership. Our company is 100% focused on travel and tourism, with more than 65 years in the industry. We were in fact founded by a hotel concierge in Siesta Key, Florida, and started with the origination of print guides and have subsequently moved into all things marketing. I joined the company about 13 years ago. I was a former DMO executive with a very small budget. Our annual budget was about $2.5 million, all funded through a lodging tax in our county. So I'm familiar with small budgets and understand those challenges that we're facing, and we work with DMOs today that also have small budgets in our hospitality division. I am also going to introduce myself as today's mathematician, because what Jennifer didn't tell you is that although the name of this webinar is Small Budget, Big Results, it's really based on this principle of an equation I'm going to introduce you today about today. AM plus F times C squared equals results. And if you can figure out what that is, right, you'll have the crystal ball that we're all been seeking in 2020. So let me explain a little bit about what this means, because as a mathematician, it's the perfect formula that will show big results for your community and for your DMO. So 4 ideas to get us started. We need to first seek out what available markets we have in our back pocket. We need to take into consideration that in 2020, it may not be the same markets that were always there for us previously. Once we know those available markets, we really need to find our focus and ensure that we're doing that which matters to drive the largest impact. If you harness that with the power of our own community and leverage the available resources from Louisiana Travel, you'll find those results you're seeking. So we have some low-cost ways for you to get started. So AM plus F times C squared equals results. Available markets. Let's talk about what's happening right now in the world around you. People are looking for answers, right? And what they're searching for is very different than what they had done previously. When you type in, is it safe? It might have been something like, is it safe for my children to consume, a product they shouldn't have? Today, it's all about, is it safe to travel? Is it safe to fly? And these consumer searches have jumped through the roof since March. What they're searching for has changed because of it. If you look at the data change and the shift in Google searches about things to do near me, places to visit near me, activities near me, what you're seeing is this tenfold increase in Google searches for people who don't want to travel too far from home, right? And so we use this type of data to inform how we would change content to react to these changes. What are people doing right now? You know, there's a lot of news hanging out there in the media about where people are going, if they're still traveling, if they're at home, if they're on lockdown, and everybody has to make that decision for themselves. But those that are out there in the world are saying, I'm visiting friends and family. I've been cooped up too long. I want to go see them. And we're seeing it's on the rise right now. Whereas before, people weren't willing to do anything. Over the summer, they slowly started increasing. And our most recent survey of travel sentiment showed that 66% of the people this fall were planning on going ahead and getting out and visiting friends and family. I think that's an important piece to keep in mind here because they're not just visiting friends and family that are next door. They're looking at taking road trips. If you look at this middle column here, 58% of Americans, to our most recent travel sentiment study, November 15th, said that they were willing to take road trips and have taken road trips within a 50-mile radius, 58%. So we have a viable market here that's saying like, yeah, like I've been out visiting friends and family and I've been taking road trips. People who have holiday travel plans, I don't know if you've seen this data yet, but 30% of Americans are saying that yes, they do have travel plans and are planning to travel this season. So again, we're sort of looking at what are people doing online? What kinds of things do they say they're willing to do, such as visit friends and relatives? How are they willing to travel? 23% said by air, 58% said by car, and yes, 30% will be during the holiday season. So I think the first thing we have to assess in our equation towards great results is available markets. And I'd ask each one of you attending to understand a little bit about like which path is really right for you. Your existing markets from 2018, 2019, they still may be there, but there might also be some untapped opportunity within your local market and those audiences within 50 miles. It could also be opportunity within visiting friends and relatives, people that are coming into your community, and how we could motivate them to spend dollars. People who are seeking road trip opportunities, time outside, looking to escape the everyday. Is there anyone that could be considering a road trip? Do you have other partner destinations that you could partner with to create an itinerary for that road trip? And then finally, we saw some data that said 23% of travelers were willing to fly. They would be considered part of that safe traveler segment that says, my plans really haven't changed. I'm still actively traveling, and you can still market to me. Everyone has to decide which path is right for them, but in the terms of the equation to drive better results, we really need to think about how our available market has changed in the midst of COVID. From there, we need to find our focus. And you might be asking yourself, what does she mean by that, right? AM plus focus times C squared equals results. Well, really, for focus, this is something you can use in your professional life and in your personal life. It's the perfect stripe between things that matter and things you can actually control. There's a lot out here in 2020 that we don't have control over, and we're seeking ways to connect our communication strategy with things that matter to our audiences. So what matters to that available market? And how can I use the things I can control to provide focus on just that? Well, what matters? Let's see. My messages, right? I can control these things. I can control my messages about safety in my community. I can create recommended itineraries for people that would be, let's say, COVID responsible. I can promote outdoor activities in my area as part of social distancing. And I can control my channels. I can control my website, my email, my social media presence, and really all of my online profiles for my destination. By online profiles, I mean things like Google My Business, your Yext listing, how you are seen on the state of Louisiana travel website, just in the general internet sense. Those things are within your control. And right now is the time to start adding the types of messaging that matters to these available markets, right? When we look at the top 10 most important factors in destination selection, we need to consider these are the things that matter to people. They want to know that it's affordable. The economy is in a little bit of flux right now because of some turmoil called COVID. And so therefore, we need to ensure that we've got affordable offers in front of people. Do you have deals on your website? If not, would this be the time to promote them? Have you created an article about free things to do in your community yet? Might be something you want to highlight. How do people know that you're reachable by car? If traditionally you've relied on flights into your market, is there a means by which you can say, we're only an hour away from blank, blank, blank? Safe. Do you have a low incidence of COVID? If not a low incidence, what's your community doing to help put protocols in place that ensure that traveler safety is factored in? Do you have great outdoor recreation opportunities, and how are those showcased on your website? If these are the things that matter to our available markets, and you have some things within your control, this is the focus that we want to seek to provide those results that we're looking for, right? So here's some ideas from other destinations that have taken a moment to kind of sit back and think about that messaging that they want to put forth. So of course we have guidelines, and they're changing all the time. What's happening in our local markets about masks being required or not required, whether or not indoor dining or outdoor dining is open. Every market is different. But the fact that we've been able to highlight on this website here, clean and safe guide, video and itineraries, kind of giving people a quick glimpse into what's happening in Chattanooga is a step in the right direction. Another example right here on the main page, COVID-19. This one's a bit alarming, but it's the choice that they've chose to make, and they want it to be ever present so people do feel safe. This is a social media post, right? And sort of, again, things that are in control. Denver just reminding people that when you're ready, we'll be here. And they've got different hashtags in place, right? Larimer Square, which was featured, has a COVID responsible message here with people in masks, right? It's open for pedestrians, and they've featured a lot of outdoor dining here, kind of reminding people safe to come to Denver. Here's a gallery of images that were shared that really focus on outdoor recreation and aspects of a destination experience that are still possible in the midst of COVID. You have a couple of examples of a farmer's market, outdoor dining, people wearing masks, and people experiencing the destination as it is today for today's requirements and regulations. This goes a long way to reassuring people that others are still traveling, that it is okay to come to the destination and have an experience. So what can you do with your photography or using user-generated content to bring that forward? I'll show you some examples here pretty soon. Another example, just quick information on Estes Park. Guests pledge, right? This is from Boston. Like, what are we doing here in Boston? And just safety guides at a glance. So these are some things, if you don't yet have on your website, you might want to take the opportunity to go ahead and put out there as part of your focused effort. Again, all we're trying to do is find an available market, make sure that we as a destination focus specifically on that by doing things that matter and that are in our control. And then we're going to empower our community. So we're going to take our available market and our focus times community and see what kind of results we can get. So C stands for community. What direction are you rowing? Sometimes I think we take for granted the fact that everyone knows exactly where we're headed. And in a community with lots of ups and downs and business closures, businesses reopening, people struggling, they may not know the leadership position that you've chosen for the destination. So first and foremost, set that direction, decide which way we're rowing. We're going to call this COVID, or no, we're going to call this something else like explore the outdoors. We're going to change our market approach and focus on people who are road tripping to our destination or those that are visiting friends and relatives instead of our traditional reach markets. They need to understand it. And at the end of the year, you've got a great opportunity to sort of educate them on what you're doing to get everybody rowing in the right direction. So TripAdvisor, this is another opportunity to educate your community. 74% of surveyed travelers said a checklist of safety measures would be very or extremely helpful. If you can tell this kind of message to your community about the importance of updating their own business information, then you'll start to have this rising tide. And that's why we multiplied the community past the available markets in focus. When businesses log into TripAdvisor, this is the first message they see now, right? That travelers want to know what their response is to COVID. And so you can add this nice message in TripAdvisor, and you're going to want to encourage all of your local businesses to do it. The same thing happens in Google My Business. They've added some new attributes like takeout and delivery. For restaurants that are no longer open for in-room dining, you can add these functions so that they display in Google Maps. When people come to your destination and they want to know what's available for takeout or delivery service, it sure is nice to have this Google Maps feature available that's really fueled by what your partners are putting in GMB. Yelp is the same way. Yelp now has these new features over here on the left where they actually tag businesses that are delivering during COVID, whether or not they might have alcohol to go, get takeout or delivery. And then you can also add in business updates, which sort of shows things over here about what's happening and what they are specifically doing. And encouraging your local businesses to put this type of messaging in place goes back to focusing on the things that matter to those available markets. Finally, in an effort to help your own community, I would encourage all of you to start posting just a blog, right? Something about what you're doing and how the education that Louisiana Travel or anyone in the industry is providing. Here's a little note here about applications for CARES assistance, what's happening with residents being able to apply for COVID help, and just a DMO that's sort of taking that direction in their rowboat, right, that they're trying to get their entire community in by providing regular updates. And then having a toolkit available for people to download research, logos, if you have such a thing, or perhaps directing them over to a partnership with their local chamber of commerce, directing them to the health department information. Something like this is a really low-cost way to communicate with your community about what you're doing to get people rowing in the right direction. So how do we add the power of two, the exponential power of Louisiana travel? Well, we've identified our available market and we've sort of acknowledged that it may not be the tried and true. It could be those within 50 miles. It could be the people on the road trips. We've really focused on that market by doing those things that we can control and those things that matter to that audience. Then we've empowered our community to get in the same rowboat with us by providing resources on our website, links to other relevant information, and really starting to showcase on our website messaging that matters. There's a lot of documentation on Yelp, TripAdvisor, Google My Business, and things that your own business community can do that we'd be happy to share after this webinar. A lot of it is posted on the industry portal for Louisiana Travel, and that's where the exponential power of the state really comes into play. So a few quick reminders on this. The Louisiana Data Engine is the backbone of the state's website. And if your community is still running events and has open businesses, please make sure it's up to date with all of that information. Current business hours matter. And if you've got an event happening, even if it's a little bit different this year and your Christmas parade is going to be a reverse parade where people drive past parked floats, great. Let's get it on the calendar so that travelers in the state of Louisiana can find it. The Google Recovery Program, I mentioned Google My Business as one of the ways you can educate your community on leveraging those tools to showcase what's happening at their business itself. My example was from restaurants, but there's plenty of others from hotels. And in the industry portal, you'll find some specific documentation on how you can share those resources with your community and also sign up businesses for office hours, which the state of Louisiana makes available to you. Let's get them signed up so they can start talking on behalf of you in addition to themselves. If you missed the earlier webinar, there in the industry portal are step-by-step instructions for hosting virtual or in-person events. So if you do want to go ahead and conduct an industry session on Google My Business and the changes they've made to allow for COVID responsible messaging, you can follow along in those step-by-step instructions on how to host that kind of event. It's incredibly helpful, and I think it's a no-cost way to get information in front of your community and use that power of C. Finally, editorial content. Louisiana Travel is begging for your information. We want stories to be featured on that website, in the social media channels, and regardless of how little or big you think it is, it's important to showcase it with that audience. We can use things like the Louisiana Story Network, which is no cost to CVBs. Were you guys aware of this? The fact that you don't have to pay a darn thing to start pushing out to this giant network these amazing visual stories. Natchitoches just recently did one, 4 Ways to See the Lights, right? Because it's changed a little bit. It's not always the same tried and true. So I'd like to switch over and show you this example of what they did and how they leveraged the platform so that people could learn a little bit about the community upcoming lights. So first of all, Jennifer, can you give me a nod if you can see the Natchitoches story? Okay, okay. Let's check technology for a second. So here's an Instagram story. Of course, you swipe up, and in this example, it's just going to play through. By car, you can drive through the historic district to see more than 300,000 lights. By boat, of course, this is always one of the most popular ways, right, to take a ride on the Cane River Queen. So you can see those things up close and personal. By carriage, here's a highlight of Patrick in particular, the festive horse guide, and then finally by foot, take a stroll along Front Street and under this amazing canopy of lights. So this was a great Instagram story that was promoted out on these channels through the CrowdRiff network, right? And Louisiana Story Network using CrowdRiff, that was of no cost at all to the CVB. So if you're seeking low-cost ways to drive results, I think this is a great example of how they've taken the power of who's their available market, right? They focused on what matters to those people. I still want to go see the holiday lights, but I'm not really sure how to do it this year. I don't know what's available to me. Then they've empowered their community and educated them. They've pulled together resources to still promote the events and leverage the power of Louisiana to drive those results. All of that's right there for them. And so using this mathematic formula, although it may seem like a no-brainer to some of you that have been in industry this long, sometimes you need just to kick in the right direction to remind yourself that this isn't going to be easy, but it's also not going to require $1 million in funding to make these things happen. When travelers see compelling content like what is available on the Louisiana Story Network, when they see that your website has relevant itineraries, outdoor recreation ideas, and they know that it's written just for them because they're a visiting friend and relative, they're a road tripper, or they're a local, they know that they're going to contribute dollars to your community and drive results that matter. So I would be happy to share more examples if you guys have questions today. So Jennifer or Teresa, if you guys want to open that up, happy to participate.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, I haven't seen any come through in the chat. We're not a huge crowd today, so if anybody has any, they want to pop themselves off mute and just pose, you can feel free to do that as well.
Yeah, I think the Louisiana Story Network actually might be one of the more new additions to what the state is offering as part of the opportunities people can leverage. So maybe you or Teresa could share just a note on how to go about actually leveraging that tool.
Absolutely. So you're 100% right. That is a brand new thing that we are doing this year. It's a new tool from CrowdRiff that they are pushing out. We're actually the first state in the U.S. to use it. It's been in Canada so far. British Columbia has had a lot of success with it. And it is free and available to all of the CVBs, as Karin mentioned. All you have to do as a CVB to get in on the platform is let us, me or Teresa, know who on your team would need access to the platform, who you want to have login information and able to go in and build stories. There's no requirement for the CVB to have been a user of CrowdRiff in the partner network at all previously. So if the thought is that, well, that sounds cool, but I'm not a CrowdRiff user, it doesn't matter at all. The training is really easy, and we have a recording that'll be going up of how to use the system that'll be on the portal as well. So we just need to know who on your team you'd want access. It can be more than one person. And then we'll get you on board and trained in how to start building stories. Once you build, and Teresa, tell me if I'm wrong, at least 10 to 15 stories for with the CrowdRiff Stories platform, you can have, at that point, you'll have passed the threshold to have a gallery of your very own. So that gallery example that Karin showed from our website, once you've built a certain number of stories, you have access to that too, as well as a variety of digital analytics on how people are consuming the stories and what the usage of those is.
That's right. That's right. I would add to that this story creator allows you to create stories that they're Google AMP stories, so they're optimized for mobile. They'll surface in Google search, and you'll also be able to syndicate those out across all of your social media networks. Now, hot news off the press, Twitter even has stories now. So I think there's great opportunity to be discoverable with the stories content, not just on the Louisiana Travel website with those galleries, as Jennifer said. A gallery is a minimum of 8 stories. So that's why the threshold is that 10 to 15. We want to make sure there's plenty of content in there to have a good experience for the users. So even if you've only created 1 or 2 stories, those are still going to bubble up to louisianatravel.com and be surfaceable there. But our goal is that everyone will jump in and start creating. And we are certainly here to help with that.
What I heard you guys say was that someone who has no experience whatsoever creating Instagram stories, that would be me, and someone who has absolutely no budget of their own in which they can pay for CrowdRiff, also me, right, could actually get a login and start experimenting using your training videos as a guide, right, to get me started. And should I find my way through the tool and have 10 to 15 stories created, I get my own gallery that I can then leverage within my own website. Is that true? In addition to Louisiana Travels.
That's right.
Yep.
And also, CrowdRiff is working closely with our partners on this, so they can get one-on-one training from the source, and a best practices guide and everything. It really is a wonderful product, and we hope everyone will take advantage.
I think if I had understood this, I would have changed the power of 2, which was the state of Louisiana, to the power of like 8, because like that's a pretty amazing feature, especially knowing that they're also going to show up in Google results. Because as we talked about earlier, the way people are searching and what they're looking for is so different that if we can come up with stories that are relevant to people, great winter hikes in Louisiana, right? You know, things to do outside, right, in my community. As people are searching for that, and you've got an Instagram story showing, I don't know, 5 different trailheads in your area. Like, how cool would that be that it just shows up in Google and really gives people a glimpse into what's possible in my community? I think we're going to have to change our formula.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions or anything come through. So unless anybody has any, we'll wrap up pretty much exactly on time. We're trying to keep these to about a half hour so that they're not a little too much. So everybody, thank you for coming. And don't forget to check out the full webinar list on louisianatravel.com/industry, and check out what recordings we have there if you've missed any, and what we have coming up in the next couple weeks.
Thank you so much for having me.